welcome back to Conversations with Rob, and a happy new year to everybody. It is 2021. I've just celebrated my birthday, and I'm looking forward to the year that is ahead of us. So, with that in mind, I am super excited about this interview that I did with Agnieszka Płonka. Agnieszka is from Warsaw, or she's from actually Krakow in Poland. And I met Agnieszka back in 2017 in Prague at LibertyCon, which is the flagship Liberty conference of Students for Liberty, which sadly probably won't be on this year. But Agnieszka is a researcher, and I invited her to talk about her writing and her research about psychological profiles within academia and within totalitarian regimes, which I think is a fascinating topic, and I'm sure you will too. So I recommend reading Agnieszka's blog posts, which I will link below, and some of her videos, and I will also link those below. So I'm really happy to be able to bring you this conversation to you all today, and I hope that you like it.
Yes, that is right. It was in Prague. So what fascinated me about what you were doing and what you were talking about is that you have a real desire to learn and to know about what is going on with totalitarian regimes, the mentality that drives totalitarianism. And I just think that that is fascinating. So my first question, Agnieszka, and welcome, is what got you interested in this wild stuff?
Yeah. Hi, Rob. Thank you so much for the introduction. And what got me interested in this wild stuff or dark stuff, because it is dark stuff. Um, it wasn't really obvious from the beginning that I would get into it. So, like when I was a teenager uh, at school, I remember I loved geography, I loved science, geology, physics. Those were my passions. But during civic classes, oh, I was just drawing a comic, in my notebook. I didn't like that. For some reason, I thought something isn't right here. I don't believe the teacher, and I just don't like politics. And when I was 16, I remember I even did that experiment. How long am I going to live without knowing who the president is? Because I disliked politics so much. However, I was born to like in 1989. You can do the math. It was also 9 days or 11 days, I believe, after the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Wow.
I was born to a pair of philosophers. My mom is a philosopher and a philologist, and my grandparents. They, my grandfather was a doctor, and my grandmother a pharmacy worker. And in our house, it was we always had like thousands of books, so I could naturally learn outside of school about history and philosophy, and it just came natural for me. I just didn't think about it too much. I thought it's in a way common sense or common knowledge. Also, my grandfather, who was the strongest father figure for me when I was little, uh, he was a very strict man, and he really wanted to have a house with tons of children that do like good work for the community, like that are doctors. And he would, when I was a little girl, way too little for this information, he would tell me all about his uncle, who was an officer in he was guarding the Polish Soviet border, and he was a major, and he was murdered by NKVD in Kharkov as part of the Katyn massacre. So, and as you know, the Soviets were obviously lying about it for 50 years, and only in 1990 they would start openly talking about it. Before, they were blaming it on Germans. So I'm a little girl. I walk into my grandfather's office. He was like, when he was an ophthalmologist, he would see his patients in our little flat. And I walk into his office, and there is a photo of his uncle, all the medals of his uncle, and he would tell me this story when I was way too young for it. But I just thought it's like everybody knows, right? This is what happened. When I was in Poland, that I was just a regular person with a regular story. People just knew, this was acknowledged. And I just didn't think about it too much. I didn't like politics. We all knew what happened in the 20th century. because I grew up in Krakow, and then I just followed my passion for science. And however, it all changed when I left Poland. So in 2013, I passionately, and some may say naively, I'm not sure if I should say that, maybe I wouldn't be fair to that girl that I was in 2013. I started a PhD in seismology in the Netherlands, and it was also coupled with an institution in Switzerland that I may name, but maybe I won't. So if you do some research, you find my publication from there, you will know where that was. And just a little bit of white spying on people's research publications. So like, and I was just, I had an open heart and an open mind, and I was just being myself and talking about the things that I know, which I thought were obvious. To my, it's more than a surprise. It was kind of a dark surprise. People were not really familiar at all with the actual history of the 20th century. Like in the Netherlands, it kind of stops in 1945. Of course, Hitler is pop culturally the epitome of evil, and that's kind of where it stops. So nobody talks about the Eastern Front, nobody talks about the Eastern Bloc. It's just like this terra incognita, and they just don't know, they just don't care. It's kind of dark, so it's better to look at the shiny things in life and just go and just do some science, just program some stuff and teach students some mathematics, and that's it. And then I thought, like, wait a second, I thought that a person who's working at the university should have some kind of basic knowledge and like basic education. And I'm not talking about political views. Of course, that also comes up with the story. But I'm talking about the actual history, about facts. And I found myself, like, already in the first months of my PhD, there was this Indian professor from Princeton that was obviously, and not so obviously for me at that time, very Marxist, and he was serious about it. And he would provoke me on coffee breaks. And then I thought, okay, so I'm going to do some seismology, like look at some seismic waves and do some research. And then this guy at the coffee break, this Indian professor, he thinks he's all that. He's so pretentious, but like he's being Marxist in front of my face. And he is not even doing that ironically. Where does that come from? I had no idea how Western academia looks like. So that was kind of my first crash with reality. But then I also had this, well, not problem, but because of my upbringing, I thought that, there is a duty that I kind of owe to my family. Because, if I go to my family grave, not everybody who's listed there is buried there physically, right? Mm-hmm. My grandfather's uncle is buried in a mass grave far to the east, and people were lying about this. And now you are sympathetic to the system. And do I have a duty to confront you? And instead of like thinking about science, I even had a nightmare once about it, about a mass grave. I had a mass grave nightmare. And it was like a few months into my PhD. And that was a red flag, wasn't it? Like literally like a red flag. And I didn't act on it. I thought, well, I'm just maybe being exalted, or maybe it's not for real, or I have other issues in my life now. Maybe it will go away. But it escalated. So now I'm here researching propaganda and what happens to academia, and also the microcosmos of narcissism and how that relates to totalitarian regimes. Because long story short, after my very disenchanting experience at universities, like the relations I had with other people were shallow. We couldn't have any like deeper conversation. They didn't seem to have the like general knowledge that you would expect from someone in like a higher education place. And in the end, in the year 2016, which was the Trump's election, and that had a profound psychological effect on academia. And after also a story I experienced during teaching, I started having panic attacks. I was very isolated. I knew, okay, this is too much. I'm going to leave academia. That's a separate story of exactly what happened. But then it turned out that my advisor just stopped talking to me. because he couldn't use me. So I started to research clinical psychology. And then when I researched clinical psychology, people that just use you as an object and just try to take control over you, I thought, wow, this dynamic really depicts what's going on in a totalitarian state on a micro level. It is the same thing in that way, in the sense that it's demanding control, exerting control, erasing individuality. And we can even coin a research project out of it. So this is kind of a long story. This is how it started. I would never think I'm going to be in, so to speak, humanities, psychology, philosophy.
Yeah.
I would never think I would be going out to do research in the Mises Institute, which is an institute of economic education. I would never thought that I would one day teach economics in high schools as a part of a volunteer project of the Polish Mises Institute during the entrepreneurship classes. Especially that, when I was in high school, I hated entrepreneurship classes because they told us to fill tax forms. But after what I experienced, this happened. And right now, with what I've seen, I have kind of grew to realize, I've matured enough to realize that ideas are very important and they really do shape our lives, and we have to take a stand sometimes.
Absolutely.
And I'm right now way more confident in that what I'm doing actually matters and is somehow meaningful. But those
Yeah,
were some my 20s, they were wild.
Yeah. No, that is fascinating. And I'd like to just maybe unpack a little bit of that. Obviously you experienced academia in Poland, right? And going over to Western Europe, let's call it. If people want to dig, they can dig. But going over to Western Europe, what did you notice was the difference between what would be commonplace in Poland, an understanding of the effects of socialism, the effects of communism? What did you notice, like even from that Indian professor, harping on about Marxism and potentially its virtues? What is the difference between Western Europe's understanding of socialism and Eastern European understanding?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And like just a little bit off topic is that I would say that in Western Europe in general, you don't experience as much personal connection with people that you work with, especially in academia. So what was my problem that was kind of outside of Marxism was that when I was in academia in Poland, a professor was kind of a mentor, someone you would connect with as a person. He would see you as another human being, and we would form some kind of friendship. And he would actually mentor me. When I was in Western Europe, what I realized that I'm not really having this connection. Like there is no curiosity, there is no like will to lead you as a human being into this world of research. How you are supposed to sit down and write publications and talk about results, and the relations are kind of way more shallow and more cold. And I mean, you may say that I just didn't have luck in where I landed, and that's also true. However, I know that other people from Poland and from Slavic countries, from Central and Eastern Europe, had the same problem. So my friend who is doing part of his PhD in France, he told me when he was in a hotel in Austria. He told me that one Russian professor, I'm not sure he was a professor, a Russian guy approaches him and says, you're from Poland or somewhere? Yes. Oh, finally someone I can talk with. Like normally.
Yeah.
So that's common. That's actually like a common, so to speak, alienation. I mean, alienation is a bad word. Hegel used it, but I use it in a different sense. When we talking about understanding of socialism and that Marxist professor from Princeton, the main difference I would say is that people in the West, they don't take the risk seriously. It's like It's just like another name for them. They are used to their life being very comfortable, right? You go out, you have goods, you have all the services you need, you have you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. And so then, like, why would politics even matter? It's just like another word, socialism, capitalism. Like, hey, look, I am so edgy. I am against whatever the system is that we have now, and they call it capitalism. So if I'm about to be like this cool rebel, I have to rebel against that. So I have to say that capitalism is bad, whatever that means. And oh, socialism just means that, hey, I'm virtue signaling, I care about the poor. And there is like no connection to real life. It's just
Mm.
like a label, a name, and they think they are being nice people, and they are it's kind of attention seeking in a way, and trying to it's a self-propaganda. It's like, look at me, I'm a nice person, I'm an edgy rebel that also cares about people. But they don't know that political systems are very, very linked with your everyday life, and they don't know what they actually mean, and that they can actually hurt you, they can actually humiliate you, and then they can actually make your life miserable. For them, it's just like they don't that doesn't matter. So, and in the Eastern Bloc, so some people, of course, are in a way detached. It's like a defense mechanism. Some people are slowly buying into this Western kind of propaganda and like discourse. However, they do remember what that actually means. That, if you try to have socialism, then they have heard stories or from their parents, or they lived through it. They know that uh, you won't have, like, you just won't walk into a store and buy meat. They know that someone may snitch on you. They know that so the police can like beat you and kill you. They know that everything will be done by the state order, and that was miserable. And people were going out of their uh, flats at 2 a.m. to get good ham, because hey, like, ham for Christmas only came like at 2 a.m. If you wanted to get some meat, you had
Mm.
to leave early, and then stay out in the freezing weather for a few hours just to have food. And it's not abstraction, it actually like really happens. So I think a lot of people that are not so affected by history in general, they think it's in the abstract sphere. And like, hey, life was good, so what is really going to change? Well, a lot may change. But I fear that for some of them, like, they will only realize that when they actually have a real gun put to their
Yeah.
heads.
Mm. Like what I see here, like in the UK and Ireland, is people wearing, say, a Che Guevara hat or like a t-shirt or something. And while they might believe that they are in some way up for equality and justice and good things, virtuous things, the reality isn't so. Like, let's set aside Mr. Guevara's nature as a human being and how he treated people. But what are people who are wearing that sort of symbology on their clothing? What are they missing? What would you love to shout in their ear and say, "Do you know what? You
Yeah,
might be taking your freedom for granted."
yes, yes. And also what I see here, because I have my own story related to t-shirts, and you know that. What I see here is kind of rejection of objective truth in favor of emotions. Because like, you approach someone with a Che Guevara t-shirt, like, I mean, I wouldn't engage, but if like you do an experiment and actually approach someone and you say, hey, do you know who that man is? Do you know what he did? Or like, you are like walking there, for example, during gay pride with a Che Guevara t-shirt, and you say, hey, do you know that he killed gays? It's like, facts don't matter. They will not actively listen to you, they will not give it a thought, because immediately they think that like you are just stating facts, but immediately they think that you are attacking them, because they feel an emotion, they feel the need to show off, they think this is cool. So if you are showing facts to them, they will think that like you are attacking them, and there will be no room for discussion. So in a lot of times it's just even pointless to engage, and that's also speaking further of narcissists and of people with no capacity of understanding different perspectives, or allowing different perspectives, or looking for truth. uh, that's when it comes to play. Like, I'm not allowing anyone to disagree with me. I don't care about facts. Only my emotions matter. And they have been in a way actually brainwashed. Like, if you read Disinformation by General Pacepa, which is a Romanian general that is the highest ranking defector to the West, and he was in charge of propaganda operation under Ceausescu, and he defected when he was actually ordered to kill someone because he decided that, well, he doesn't want his daughter to have a murderer as his father. So he surrendered. So he surrendered in the American embassy somewhere in Europe, and then he defected to the US, and he's hiding there. Like, he actually said that, okay, that Che Guevara T-shirt thing, that was like a masterpiece played by the KGB. Like,
Yeah.
he legit did write that. And this is just, channeling emotions of young people, making them oblivious to history, and making them resent objective truth, because objective truth to them speaks disagreement. And like, if you disagree with me, like, you are attacking me. There is no room for discussion. That is actually very
Mm.
narcissistic. So that's one thing. And I do have a story about the T-shirt. So that was in 2016, and the story of a T-shirt kind of started my very difficult time in academia, and eventually led to how I quit my PhD in the end. I was teaching algebra in the Netherlands. Oh, I said the Netherlands. Now you will know. Well, you can know anyway. So I was teaching algebra, and in that space, it's like you walk around the room full of students. They are solving math problems, and if somebody has a question, they raise their hands. You come over, you explain things. And again, I was kind of still wearing my heart on the sleeve. I was young. I didn't have my shield on.
Mm.
I was like very personable at that time, and there was a student is like waving his hand at me. I come over, I explain something about vectors, and then I see he is writing topics in English in Cyrillic. It's like, why is he writing in Cyrillic? And then I walk around the room some more, and I notice he has a hammer and sickle T-shirt. So that's a bit more than Che Guevara, Like, Che Guevara is
Mm.
so out there everywhere that I have managed to block it all out. Like, I just don't react to it. But that was a legit hammer and sickle T-shirt, and he was writing in Cyrillic. And there was a professor that was kind of supervising the class, and she was in my research group. And then I approached her and I said, "Hey, like, this student has this T-shirt on. I don't feel good." And she would just dismiss it, like, just think he's stupid. It's like, okay. But then the problem is that my legs started shaking. My stomach started to feel like it's burning. And then I tried to, I don't know how, but I still explained a math problem to another student. But then I realized that, okay, my body is doing weird stuff. I feel like I have to leave the building.
Mm.
Everything is burning and closing down. Only now I know I had a panic attack. So I left the room. I kind of called my boyfriend to calm down. I go back to the room. I approach the professor and I ask, "Hey, can I leave? Because I really don't feel good. Is it okay if I leave early?" And then she said, "Well, yeah, you can go." So I thought she would make a connection between what I said before and why I'm leaving. Like, I thought that would be something, obvious, right? Like, okay, this is not a detail. This is some basic knowledge. Like, you know what a hammer and sickle means and what
Mm.
it meant to, like, a
Well,
lot
you
of
would
people.
think that they do.
And especially you should know what it means to someone from Poland, right?
Mm.
So then I uh I should have just, like, I didn't go home. I should have, but I had like a Skype meeting with wonderful advisor that day, and like other events were happening. So regretfully, I went back to my office, and my colleagues are asking me, why are you not teaching? So I innocently told them, and and they said, why, what, why is that a problem? And I replied, well, it's like wearing a swastika, and like I just didn't feel good, you know. I had a panic attack. Like for me, it means death, and I have a reason for it. And like, you think it's like wearing a swastika? Like, I don't think that. I replied, I know that. And I was in shock that I have to explain it. So that was kind of like my cultural shock, that something that I thought would be common knowledge was not common knowledge. And it was personally difficult for me because of my family's history. And I know that right now you would bring up genocides from 80 years ago, and people would think like, oh, you think so much about history, or you're so exalted. And I also had this problem expressing that, but now I know, like, hey, it did happen. It really did. I don't mean to be, hey, you should know about Poland because Poland is great. Like everybody has a story, but this is for real. Like if it happened, it can happen again. It is in human nature. I need my story to be acknowledged so that I feel safe. Even if you don't know about it, you can express some curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
you can express some empathy, you can ask me questions, and I will do the same for you. We all come from somewhere, but it's like important for us to acknowledge the past and acknowledge where we come from and what basic symbols mean. And that was just not there. So, but that's not the end of the story. Uh, so I kind of like, I told them what happened and why I felt so bad. And by the way, if it happens today, I would be able to block it because I would have my guard up, you know?
Mm.
I'm not that uh, girl with my heart on the sleeve
Yeah.
anymore. But I was a bit younger then. So at the end of the day, a British girl who actually kind of understood me, I think she had slightly better general education than other people because like she still went to Oxford, and like whatever you can say about Oxford or Cambridge, they still value some basic education in other fields too, so that you understand the word. And then she comes to my office, I think in the evening, and I stayed just because there was like a cool physics lecture by a Nobel laureate about cosmology, and I just wanted to go to that lecture, so I stayed, even though I had a panic attack before. So that girl comes over and she says, I defended you during lunch. Like, what? Why did you defend me during lunch? What happened during lunch? And she says, oh, but that professor that was teaching algebra were asking that, well, you left me after a phone call. So did someone die? Yes, someone died. A lot of people died. uh, but like she just didn't make a connection between what I said before and after like I left. Like she just didn't make a connection. But then that gossip girl who defended me said it was because of a t-shirt. And professor started talking how a student can wear whatever he wants and how she is old-fashioned for defending me, and how it's just like it's just like having a problem with someone having a black hair. And they made
Wow.
start like a discussion about fashion out of this. They said that, it's like having a problem with like you having black hair, so it's like having a problem with a t-shirt. And they just didn't understand what the real problem was at all. And even that girl said that, oh, that professor, and she is, oh, ERC grant recipient, she is like Dutch Academy member, what have you. She thought it's just like a hippie sign. She called me old fashioned for defending you. They just didn't know. But that was so basic. I mean, that was a hammer and sickle. That was not a detail. That was not some kind of, dictator from a country that you never hear about if you're not interested in it. That was their own continent and their own history. And they didn't know. There's legit, there are professors out there that should never be let out of high school. But that's not even the main problem. Like, the main problem is like how they treated me. Nobody talked to me directly. They all talked about it behind my back,
Mm.
and uh, it was just a ridiculous situation. And after this, get this, um, Trump got elected, like, I think 6 weeks after this situation. So academics went crazy. They were crazy emotional over this. And, like, of course, like, I'm not a fan of Trump. None of us is, but for different reasons. And we can all agree that, it's fair to criticize him in an appropriate social setting when everybody is fit for the discussion. Like, you have a real argument, boom, you can criticize Trump, no problem. But they have made a cult out of this. Like, they would
Mm.
greet each other with political innuendos instead of a hello, and they were like very childish over this. So the day when Trump got elected, I had to supervise an exam with the same professor from the T-shirt situation. And she greets me instead of a hello. She says, "I think I'm becoming religious because the world is going to hell." See, there's this assumption that you have the same hysteria attack as she does. And well, there was this whole hammer and sickle thing 6 weeks before. She didn't think the world was going to hell then. It's just like a student can wear whatever he wants. So it's like a serious issue of perspective here, and like a
Mm.
serious issue of ignorance.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to sort of touch on now. Is there a sort of psycho profile that embeds itself in academia? Is there something going on in academia where all these ideas are coming from? Like,
Yeah.
it's very rare that you see any like libertarians or right wing professors coming out of academia. So, like, has your research led you to anything regarding
Yeah,
that?
because they are bullied out early. They
Yeah.
are bullied out early, and they decide that maybe entrepreneurship or teaching is like a better way to save the world. Also, I was at a conference in San Francisco 1 month after Trump got elected, and I have witnessed the Communist Party of the USA spreading out flyers in the congressional center, and I had to clean it up, and only like an elderly Chinese professor smiled at me. And it was a geophysical conference. It wasn't like a
Wow.
political conference. There was a guy with a legit red star on his hat spreading out newspapers in front of a Congress center. And the woman who called someone old fashioned for defending me, I have this very strong suspicion that she legit sneaked out from behind and pushed me physically. So that was a conference in geophysics 1 month after Trump got elected. Everybody was greeting each other with some political innuendos instead of a hello. Like, when you had your identifier, like with your name, people would glue like explicitly political ribbons to it. So it was kind of a mob, or like an agitation uh, conference. There wasn't a scientific conference in geophysics. I have shown some photos of the ribbons of what was going on there in one group, and people said, well, I can't believe it was a professional conference. And it was the most important conference in geophysics, like, that is every year held in San Francisco. It was insane. I remember I was running away to a church because, like, okay, in church they won't find me. And I'm not exaggerating. But the question of the psychological profile here, that is a great question. And I can talk for a longer time about this, actually. So my story is that after this conference and after everything I've been through, I have sincerely communicated that I do have troubles in academia. I don't think I want to stay. However, at this point, I still wanted to find that passion back. I still wanted to maybe be a professor, like maybe find a postdoc. I still wanted to finish my PhD. I was in the last year of my contract already. I did some work. So, but I did communicate my issues sincerely, also in hope of finding a friend, finding someone that would empathize with me because I was so lonely. And there was one Russian guy on our mailing list, so I was hoping I could, in a way, make friends with him because all that was too much. I needed someone to talk to. However, what I didn't know is that my advisor perceived this as criticism. And what I didn't know, I thought I have the space to come clean about what is happening with me because he was so nice and charming in the beginning. But after I actually said that I'm considering leaving academia, after I said that I want to go on summer school in economics, instead of doing geophysics, that was Mrs. University. It was amazing. But after I did all those things, my advisor thought, hey, she's not staying. She's disposable. She's not even admiring me. What's wrong with her? And he started to ignore me in such a subtle way that I couldn't make a problem out of it. People started pretending I didn't exist on corridors. And eventually, I just couldn't get feedback out of this person. I was invisible. I was just like not there. And other people also in the other institutions started to pretend I don't exist, probably over the T-shirt rumor. Probably somebody called me a fascist, obviously. So I was there. I want to get feedback. I want to finish my PhD. I feel burned out. I feel abused, and people pretend I don't exist. I feel even more burned out. I just cannot look at my work. And to squeeze feedback out of my advisor, I asked him, hey, like, can I book a defense date? Because he would just ignore me otherwise. But instead of telling me what's left to do, he would say, whatever, it's your responsibility. Then I booked a defense date, thinking he's doing his job. I had a negative review, which was righteously negative. I was in no state to defend this thesis. I couldn't write it longer. It was just like a report because I wanted to get away. But then he agreed that, hey, like you really shouldn't defend this. I would try to hold him accountable for it. He would rage, shout at me over the phone. He would shout in such a way that I'm like, should I call the police or should I call an ambulance? I have never witnessed this kind of anger in any living human. He slammed the phone and stopped talking to me and told people I was crazy. And then nobody would help me. And I had to change institutions. I had to change countries. I had like a 2-year break from my PhD. And that's my story. And I mean, there's of course a lot more to that story. But what I started to research is that when somebody behaves so weirdly, and he would, and I noticed that he was raging at me whenever he felt that I am challenging his intellectual prowess. And whenever he felt threatened, whenever he didn't like the fact that I'm trying to do things in another field and I'm successful in it, whenever he was jealous that I was invited by the Prince of Liechtenstein to the castle. Those instances where he was threatened or where he thought I'm criticizing him, they really triggered like abuse from him. And then I thought, wait, something's up. Like, I thought I can talk to this guy, but now I see something's up. I have to research that. That's not right. Something is not sticking. Like, I'm missing some information here. So I got into psychology, and of course, again, I know what I've been through. A disclaimer is that I am not qualified to diagnose anyone. However, I've been through what I've been through, and don't diagnose anyone remotely, guys. And don't do that. I can
all
only
the caveats
say about like my experience. I'm not going to also diagnose people like Hegel or Marx or Napoleon with that disorder, although it's tempting. However, there is no way that wasn't narcissistic. So those are people that have been, in a way, they have been deeply hurt in childhood. So when you are a child, you need to be asserted as your own person. You need empathy from your caregivers. You need to be like, you need to get the message of, hey, you are loved just
Mm-hmm.
how you are. You are worthy
Mm-hmm.
just how you are, just the way you are. You are enough. You are your own whole person. You are amazing. And it doesn't matter what you accomplish or not. It's just who you are as a person that counts.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are valid how you are. And children that do not get that message, that are abused, that, for example, are loved conditionally only if they deliver like
Mm.
straight A's from school, there's a lot of instances here. Some say it can be genetic. I mean, there's a lot of different dynamics. There's a lot of different just personality traits. But it's possible that if a young child doesn't get that message, then their brain just doesn't develop in
Mm.
the way that they should. And by the time they're 25 and their personality is fixed, they may have a personality disorder. In this particular case, narcissistic personality disorder, where uh, you have this deep sense of shame about who you are deep down inside. So you build up a whole false self, and you think other people just exist to meet your needs.
Mm.
Like you think you are kind of stuck in being 4 or 5 years old. Like other people exist to meet my needs. The universe starts with me and ends with me, and everything that I see or do is relational. Is that person that another person is only good as long as they can fulfill my needs, and as long as they praise me, as long as they tell me I'm a great, advisor, because they have no sense of self-esteem that is internal.
Mm.
Everything comes from, this worldly praise. So like, hey, you praise me, I will control you. You are my subordinate. You are an object to be used. You have to praise me because I am so deeply damaged
Yeah.
inside.
They call that
So,
narcissistic supply, and they look for uh, victims all around. Yeah.
and in personal relationships, they abuse people ruthlessly, but they
Mm.
don't see that because the universe starts and ends with them. And also, they can only, like, things are can only be either all good or all bad, depending on how they fit the narcissist's needs. So if the narcissist suddenly see that, hey, you're not going to do what I want, you are challenging me, you are a liability. Why are you doing those things that are outside of me? And why are you a separate person? I
Mm.
despise you being a separate person to me. You must be disposed of. Like, you are trash. You are
Mm-hmm.
no good. Like, there is no good in you. They cannot integrate the idea that a person can have good traits and bad traits.
Yeah.
Like,
Or be an individual.
they cannot view you wholly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's either all good or all bad, depending on how you can be used. And academia is one of the places that those people gravitate to. But not only academia, also obviously politics, corporations, all structures that have hierarchy,
Mm.
that have some kind of esteem, so that you can show off,
Status.
because
Yeah.
this is what you need.
Yeah.
So like, you need to feed off other people, you need to feed off their admiration, you need to have status.
Mm-hmm.
They are very status driven. So when my advisor was still talking to me, once when he called me after he raged at me, his first asked question was, "What is your status?"
Isn't that
Legit.
interesting?
So there is this idea of status, and then they will believe in any like ideology that is nowadays hot, that can get their needs. They don't
Yeah.
even see that it's not really their own opinion, but they will do it just to be cool, be perceived as intellectual elite, and they will defend it in a very aggressive manner because they were so programmed to, hey, like, I'm part of the cool guys. So what is the cultural intellectual elite at universities in
Mm.
America? Of course, oh, hey, I'm a professor at Berkeley, I have to be socialist.
Mm.
But they don't see that. And it's it's really uh no place for discussion, no place for being open to another person, no place for being open to another perspective. It's just aggression, but with this aggression there is something like, I want something from you, I want admiration from you,
Yeah.
I want you to validate me, look how cool I am. No, 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 you are not going to discuss things with me, because then we may disagree, and if we disagree, it means that you are attacking me. So no discussion. I am cool. I am the, like, socialist professor in Berkeley and Harvard, and I do not even entertain the idea of seeking the truth. So that's kind of the mechanism here. They may disguise as, oh, like, let's talk about different perspectives, but those perspectives are actually like very much the same. They just differ by details. It's just like a facade. And I actually also had that conversation with my advisor. He would be shouting at me. I wanted to clarify the situation. He would be shouting at me saying, we are not having this conversation. I am a scientific advisor. And then he would say, no, we are not going to talk about it because it's clear that we will disagree. Oh, so you only
Wow.
talk to people that agree with you. We are not going to talk about it because it's clear we will disagree. First, how do you know? We haven't talked about it yet. How can you know my perspective? And secondly, hey, you only talk to people you agree with? What happens to the idea of university?
Yeah.
Like the medieval people that founded first universities with this great idea of
Open dialogue.
exchange,
Yeah.
of conversation. They are rolling in their graves.
Super dangerous. It's almost as if these ideologies and these types of psychoprofiles together create a kind of danger for humanity. And
Oh yeah.
it's something that people are not really talking about. Like, you never hear, what was the childhood of our political leaders like? You know, did they get what they needed? Are they potentially at risk of having one of these disorders? And this is, and in academia, in all halls of power around the world. So, like, in terms of your research and what you've come over, you mentioned a few names at the start of this conversation, but is there any profiles in history that we can fairly surely say have some of these psychological profiles?
Yeah, so like, I have to make a disclaimer. You shouldn't really be doing that. Like, you cannot diagnose people of the bad, like, from history, and call it science or be treated seriously. So after that disclaimer, of course, I can answer that question. And I think, like, there's another remark that we should make, and that's another thing that a lot of people don't get. And, like, the Marxist professor that was provoking me at coffee breaks, he certainly didn't get that. And that's the idea of methodological individualism, something very important in Mises, something very important in my research. I say it again, methodological individualism. It says that only an individual can act, only an individual can reason. So if you say that, that's a classic example from Mary Rothbard essay. If you say that France declared war, like, it's a figure of speech. France didn't declare war. There's, like, you had a bunch of generals and ministries, and they interacted with each other as individuals that they are, and then they decided to declare war. There is no entity such as France that is able to declare war. And in a way, that should be common sense, right? You go out and, like, what is law enforcement? Law enforcement is, like, still individuals interacting with each other, and it ends up with a police officer knocking on your door. Like, he has an individual brain, he has his own boots, he has his own hand, he has his own childhood. So in this way, like, the world is just individuals interacting with each other. That doesn't say that things like crowd mentality or crowd going crazy, they do exist. There are some phenomena that are supra individual, like
Yeah.
they consider more than one individual, but ultimately you have your own brain, I have my own brain, you have your own mind, I have my own mind, and France cannot, like, declare war. And that was something that really went over the head of this Marxist professor, he would say that, well, but no, but there is such thing as France. And then he would even comment, he wanted to talk to me about some events in Polish politics, saying that, like, you are Polish, so, like, this is a part of you. No, I wasn't even following. I mean, I have nothing to do with something that some crazy person in Warsaw declared. Like, I am my own person. Like, the kind of passport that I'm holding, like, doesn't matter here. But this is that's intellectual, pseudo-intellectual and very sad legacy of Rousseau and of Hegel and of all those philosophers that were in the end like very totalitarian in their teachings. They just couldn't get that. And the reason they were very totalitarian is that they just didn't get human nature right. They just didn't get it right that we are all unique. We are worthy of love and respect just because of who we are. And we are beautiful as we are. There is no kind of social construct. We are not meant to be objects used in a state machine. And all these totalitarian philosophers viewed people as like this mold that you like, or clay that you can, form a state out of. And this is very similar. Like, notice this is so similar to how a narcissist treats another person. Like, you are an object to be used in my agenda. I don't care about your uniqueness. I don't love you. I don't care who you are. I only care about what can you do for me and can you be controlled. This is the same as a totalitarian state. So to answer your question, when I arrived at Mises Institute last year, I talked to Professor Salerno about what I want to be researching. And I said, well, I want to track down psychological manipulations in totalitarian philosophies. And then Professor Salerno said, read Classical Economics by Rothbard, volume 2, this and this chapter. So Professor Salerno is amazing. Yeah. So I go to the library, I take the book and I read. And I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Oh my God, Hegel. So if you read Hegel, there is this notion in him that stems actually from a Christian heresy. And of course, like, if you are a proper Christian, you would say that, God created the universe out of love, and he wants us to be happy as we are, unique human beings, and we have free will, and we can be estranged from God because of our choices, because of our free will, but he provided us with like a way to salvation, which is his son. But it is up to each individual. Like, Christianity in like the proper version is a very individual creed, but they were these heretics that say, hey, no, God is not perfect. Hey, Aquinas is looking at you and he's not pleased with what you're saying. But they were saying, hi, God is not perfect, and he created the universe out of uneasiness, and now we need to reunite with God in like a total sense. Like, we are one being, we are one, there is just one blob of humanity, so we have to unite. So there is no individuality is evil. We have to unite, and we have to reach unity, and then reach God, and be, this one cosmic blob. It's like crazy. It's scary. Wow. And what did they do? All those philosophies that have like a process of history, all this Marxism with process of history, that, history is unfolding. There are these laws that are completely, taken out of like a crazy person's mind. All these ideas that have like a process of history in them, that have no that they're just not real. They stem from this heresy that there is some kind of higher level laws that we are very gnostic. People are very gnostic about it. They just say, like, this is what's gonna happen, like, first capitalism, then socialism, then happiness, then reunification, no alienation. Very crazy ideas. It all stems from a Christian heresy. It all stems from somebody saying that God isn't perfect. It's crazy. It's like, but if you read Rothbard's second book on his like his economic history and economic history of thought, then you will see this progression. God isn't perfect. There is this heresy. We have to reunite. Then comes Hegel and says, individuality is evil. We all have to be one consciousness. We are one unity. There is no such thing as individual man. When Hegel writes man, he writes the one mind of the species. And then comes Marx with his creation of conflict, with his class conflict, with dialectics that is understood as eradication of any notion of truth, like everything can be right. It's like a very skewed meaning of dialectics. Like I'm right now working on a paper on history of dialectics, showing how it went from a method of argumentation to a method of manipulation. And so Hegel would be saying, hey, we are one, and the state is divine because the state unifies us, and there is just one will of the state, one will of man, and the more you are subjected to the one will of the state, the freer you are.
Oh,
so this is a complete opposite of the word freedom.
Yeah.
That's very narcissistic. It's like, and then King Friedrich of Prussia say, hey, Hegel, that's a nice philosophy you have here. How can I use it as a king of Prussia? Oh, the state is divine. Everyone has to subject to my will because we have to unite as one species, just one mind. And of course, I am the divine state because I'm king of Prussia. Let's make a
What could
total.
go wrong? What could go wrong?
So, and Hegel was big in the 19th century. He was very big. He was like the philosopher. Of course, it's changed in the 20th century for the worse even, but this common ground here, like this common traits, is that not giving respect to the individual, not giving respect to you as a person of your own agency and your own free will, saying that no, you should be a part of the divine state. You should be a part of a cosmic blob that reunites with the imperfect God. You should be a part of the ideal society where the party tells you what to do. And it all comes from viewing human nature in a very skewed way, like not understanding human nature at all. And not understanding that human nature is what it is, it's beautiful, and it will not be changed by law. So Hegel, his philosophy was like a narcissistic defense mechanism. Like exactly, narcissists do the same as a defense mechanism as what Hegel did with his philosophy. They would say that, no, only I exist. The universe starts and ends with me. I have to be infinite. I have to be amazing. And you have to subject to my will, otherwise you criticize me. There was even a passage in Hegel saying that there is this sorrow of finitude, that I want to be everything. I want to be everything in the universe. My mind is the only mind there. That is a child's talk in like 4 or 5 year old age, not being loved.
Yeah. Crying out for its needs to be met. Yeah.
And crying out that, hey, I want to be everything. I want to be everywhere. I want everyone to be me. And even if you look up on YouTube, there is a very great channel by Dr. Les Carter, and he has a video saying that, what is the narcissist's attitude to another person? You are not me. How can you not be me?
Yeah.
And so you go on YouTube and you look up videos on narcissists and just psychology, and then you go on to read what Rothbard says about Hegel, and like some quotations from Hegel saying that, oh, it is so bad not to be finite. This is the alienation of finitude. This is what Hegel was writing about. And you're like, wow. You are just like describing probably your psychological issues as a narcissist, and you're turning it into a whole philosophy, which is totalitarian. And then Marx comes and he makes it even more manipulative.
Wow. What would you say is the ultimate societal outcome of the end of this psychoprofile? What would you say is the worlds that they would want to create if they had their way and they could get power in every hall of power around the world? What would be the outcome that they would choose for society?
What they would create is like what they claim they want to create. That cannot exist because that's just not the world that we live in. This is just not the truth. But because what they want to create is a lie, they need to eradicate the notion of truth. They need to say, like, hey, let's figure out a philosophy that says that I'm always right and there is no right or wrong, and that doesn't matter because then I can fool people more. But the problem is they are chasing after something that will never happen because they do not understand human nature, because they are damaged people. Because they are damaged, they crave for control, they crave for power. But what they claim they will achieve for society will never happen. But what can happen is for them, they will, be leaders of a criminal organization. So they will have a good life in a way, right? At least externally, they could have a mansion, like your dictator on socialism, like a few homes, jacuzzi, like some like Soviets hire people understanding had their own brothels. Like you can have all that. You can steal from people endlessly and then, meet all of your physical needs. The question is that what life is about? Are those your only needs? Because if so, then you're going to die. And all that you do for other people is abuse. Do you want to live your life like this? I mean, then damaged people with personality disorders, people that crave for power, that crave for control, they can never be satisfied. They just want more and more because that hole inside them, it's endless. Like they needs haven't been met when they were young children, when their brain is developing, so they do not believe that they are worthy, like they are self-loathing. So they crave for more and more status, more and more power, more and more money, women, admiration. But it's all external to them. And then finally then you die. But what would they want for society? Some of them may believe in the beginning, but in the end they will just crave more power for themselves, and abusing people will start to be easier and easier on the way in the process, because in this structure of, let's say, a controlling party, there are higher functioning narcissists that are way more Machiavellian. They will suck you into their dirty game. So what will come out of it? What they claim will come out of it? Like if they claim these good things will come out of it, they are either naive and manipulated, like young people in Dublin, or they are cynical and they just do it to advance their agenda.
So if we consider ourselves triage nurses and doctors on the field, on the war frontier, and we look at people who act in this way, how can we give them the olive branch to not enact what it is that they are doing? How can we protect ourselves from what it is that they are trying to do to gain all this power? And
oh, that's a very good question. The problem is when someone is disordered, it's this persistent pattern that in a way cannot be unlearned, and they will not be willing to accept they may need like serious 20-year therapy. Like they will not just consider this. They will be stuck into their universe and their games. So in a way, all that we can do is protect ourselves and try to advocate for a power structure that is way more localized, in a way that you give more power to the individual on the local level, that is way less centralized, that there is like way less power structure coming from one person, like one bureaucracy, one divine state, just try to secede, try to minimize the government's power, and try to defend the rule of law. That is very important, because like the narcissists, the people who are disordered, people who are using false philosophies that claim false anthropology, false human nature, I do believe they are above the law. Like they believe they are above the law. The law doesn't apply to them. Like they can do whatever they want. They are entitled. They are special, right? They are the whole universe, so they don't need to answer before the law. So, and that's why most of problems in today's society on like the political level, it comes from, and I'm going to say that word, inequality. But what kind of inequality? Inequality before the law.
Yeah.
Like the Federal Reserve can print money, but you cannot. And they make all of us poorer in the outcome, not excluding the financial people that sit close to the Federal Reserve. And they are just basically stealing of people. People in uniforms can kill others and others don't. That's the inequality before the law. Like the government can get away with murder, but you can't. The government can get away with meddling with the monetary supply and making you poor and stealing from you, but you can't get away with that. This is inequality before the law, and this is entitlement. This is narcissistic entitlement. If someone is a narcissist, they will be like, I don't have any accountability. Like, how dare you criticize me? I can do whatever I want. I am the one mind of the universe. Like, you should be me. So to kind of dissolve that, like, we need a structure that, you know, stops the power, stops the central power. Like, opt for way more decentralized or more federalized states, opt for secession. And I understand, you know, in a lot of instances in today's world, that may not always be the geopolitically like wise solution, because there are other players, there are other sociopaths out there. So that's just like a general statement. Like, you always have to consider everything. It's every situation is unique in a way. But how do we defend ourselves individually, like psychologically, in individual relations? We need to stand our ground and have boundaries. And what is very important is for people to call them out. If you see abuse, have a spine, stand up and say, this is not okay. This is not how you treat a person. Because what is, I think narcissists have even more kick out of the fact that they can get away with what they're doing. And they create this kind of toxic structures when they have people admiring them, when they have other narcissists close to them that are furthering their agenda. They have enablers, and they have people that are just biting their tongue. So they see that someone is a scapegoat, someone is abused, someone is laughed at, someone is phased out. Nobody, they either fear him, or they don't think it's that important, or they don't think it's that bad, or they are being manipulated themselves, and nobody will stand up and say, hey, this is wrong. Like, how could you do that? You don't treat a person this way. And the more people have the capacity to see the truth, stand up for the truth, and have some morality and have a spine and stand up to them and say, hey, no, then the less power the narcissists have. Like, you should try not to be manipulated, and you should have that courage inside you to defend the abused people. And many people just don't have that. Many people do not believe like things like that happen. They don't believe that bad things happen. But everyone is good, everyone means well, everyone is right, and it's not that bad, it's all cool, I just want to be left alone. I'm just like a liquid that is taking the form of a container. I have no spine. I have met people like this in that toxic structure that I was in. There was someone who could tell me, hey, everyone is right. And then I would reply, like, how can you be a scientist and claim everyone is right? Like, being right is a notion of, like, that connects to the truth, right? So if two people are saying two different things,
Yeah.
they are either both wrong or one of them is wrong. That is junior high school logic.
Yeah.
And that person was a scientist saying everybody's right. And when I said that, she would say, oh, you think that, and I think another thing, and see, that's okay.
Oh, let's agree to disagree.
It's
That is the most.
like,
Oh, it's ugly.
this is absolutely terrifying. That
Yeah.
is so terrifying. You just take the notion of truth, throw it outside of the window, like block all possibilities of like true and honest and normal discussion, and then the narcissist can do whatever he wants because everyone is right and it's all cool and it's all good. It's not. Not everyone is right.
Yeah.
But the problem here is that they see the word right as, kind of nice, or if you say somebody isn't right, it means that you attacked them as a person. It means that you are being mean to them. And well, it's not true. Like, if you say that someone is not right, then you're just saying that they are not right about the particular thing. Like, we can talk about it. But no. For them, it's already criticism. So, and it's unpleasant, and they don't want to feel unpleasant emotions. So they just like block it all out and pretend that it's all cool. And then I was talking to people about this, saying, well, this person just got under my skin by saying that everyone's right. And I had a girl saying, oh, but everyone is right. And I said, well, yeah. And then I used the psychological manipulation that you always use on Germans. Was Hitler right?
Mm.
And then say, oh, okay, no, of course you're right. Wow, that was easy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that, but you have to get your definitions straight. You have to get the definitions of the words that you're using straight. Otherwise, you're just, smiling as other people are killing each other.
Yeah,
And it's not
absolutely.
abstraction. It did happen in the last century.
Exactly.
I
Many times.
I also had a person saying, like someone in that group could tell me, oh, you must feel lonely here because in here people are nice. So
Oh.
I'm not nice. I'm not nice for standing up for myself. She would say that, well, I'm not nice for not trusting the government. When I said that, like I prefer to be able to defend myself. And she would say, well, you're not nice and people in here are nice. They trust the government. And
That's an
then I would,
interesting one. So nice people trust the government, and everybody else who doesn't trust the government isn't nice. Is that the conclusion we're to draw?
I think it could be that her brain was just like really defending, like she kind of wanted to use the word naive because she almost realized something, but then she had like a reaction against it. So she said nice.
She was probably high in agreeableness because that's the idea. Like people who want to be nice, they're high in agreeableness, and
It's like way too high on agreeableness, and then you would say like, but look what governments are doing,
yeah,
and that they can legit come over and kill you, and it's not abstraction. I mean, the murders in Srebrenica, they happened 25 years ago. This is not some kind of ancient history that people in uniforms could come and take you defenseless and put a gun to your head. Like, this happened in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, not even 1,000 kilometers from where we were talking. But I'm the one who's not nice. Because what? Because if I was from Bosnia, I would prefer my 13-year-old son to live and not die.
Yeah,
they just don't have that perspective. It's just like not linked with reality in their heads. That's the problem.
It's so unfortunate. Speaking of the Balkans there, you had an interesting summer with all of the restrictions and everything.
Yes.
Well, I'll let you tell the story. Like, what happens to get yourself over to Alabama? What did you have to go through? You had boats and airplanes. It sounded like the right adventure.
So the story is, after all that I've been through, I really wanted to research these psychological manipulations in totalitarian philosophies. So the idea was that, hey, we are all individuals. So if the state manipulates you, if the state is being abusive, if the state treats you like an object, it all boils down to someone abusing you on an individual level. Somehow you are being manipulated, can't. You live in fear because of what they're doing, and it all stems from a false notion of a human being. So let's research all those things in Hegel, in Marx, and go to Alabama to do it. And then I thought that last year could be the last year of in my life, in my recent life, that where I have the possibility and freedom to do it, and I really wanted to do it to, in a way, close the chapter of my 20s when I was, well, abused and got into this dark philosophy. So I applied for a fellowship in residence at the Mises Institute in Alabama, and that was kind of my dream to go there, especially that the Mises Institute, when I was in this toxic situation, me going to that economic school, it helped me make real friendships. It helped me realize that I'm not alone. It made me feel seen and valued and acknowledged, and it really did save me. So I owe a lot to the Institute. It's a great place, it's a great experience, and I recommend applying for Summer Mises University to anyone, and I also recommend applying to a research fellowship for graduate students if you have a research plan of your own. That was very important for me, and that was I really couldn't see anything coming in between me and the fellowship, but then came the travel ban, right?
Yeah.
So we met in Madrid in March, and it was still before the war.
Yeah.
And we got back from Madrid, and then boom, stay at home. Boom, you cannot go to the States if you only have a B1 visa and you are in Schengen. And I only have a B1 visa. And I didn't apply for any other visa because it was just like 2-month fellowship. I didn't need to. So I didn't have any good documents to travel to the States. And at the time, I spent spring in Sweden, in Malmö, close to the Baltic Sea. And I was very, very gloomy. I thought, how can this be? How can I not travel for my fellowship? I don't even leave my apartment. We only go to like walks in the forest. I don't even interact with people. I'm healthy. Like whatever, if I had anything, like it's long gone. I'm just sitting at home making videos and free market roadshow panels, and I want to go to Alabama. It's absurd. Like I don't want to let that travel ban stand between me and my Mrs. Fellowship. Like, what can I do? Can Judge Napolitano talk to Trump? Like, I know they know each other. Like, you know. So I was going a bit crazy, and I did. But the problem is, like, when you see the information that are issued by the government, they are oftentimes very messy. Like, you don't really know what they mean. So in the end, so I thought that anyone with just a B1 visa cannot enter. But then I went to like whitehouse.gov website, and there's like a coronavirus panel, and then you read individuals with a B1 visa that have been in the last 14 days in such states. And then I thought, wait a second. So if I leave Schengen, wait for 14 days and find a flight, is that like a normal procedure then? So I called the DHS 3 times about it. And I realized that, okay, this might just work. So I think in early June, Wizz Air opened a flight connection between Sweden and Belgrade. And hey, Belgrade is in Serbia. Like we met in Belgrade and we had a great time there. And it's not in Schengen. So let's go to Serbia. Because like all the research that I've made through my flight, through like online with the flights, like the best option was to go to Serbia. So 2nd of June, I packed myself for Alabama and I went to Serbia. I flew to Belgrade. I was living in a very nice hostel close to the Danube River, and there was a Siamese kitty there, and a very nice lady that I asked, hey, I need a stamp from the police that I am now in Serbia. So can you like go and ask for them like to give me a piece of paper and stamp saying that I lived.
I've been here.
So So she said like, of course I will do that. Like I got a stamp with like she now entered Serbia. I found a Turkish Airlines flight from Belgrade to Atlanta with a stopover in Istanbul. And then I had to call Turkish Airlines asking, hey, I have a Polish passport, so theoretically I'm on travel ban with Turkey. Can I still use your flight for a change? And they said yes. So I lived in Belgrade for 2 weeks. I met our Students for Liberty friend Stefan there. I had a Liberty Com T-shirt. We met like twice. We talked about things. I had a lot of cool adventures there. My flight to Atlanta was supposed to be June 17th, so that like it's been 2 weeks. I was outside of Schengen. The funny fact was that I wasn't really quarantining in Serbia, right? I had way more chances to catch the virus when I was walking around Belgrade,
Isn't that
eating in
fascinating?
cafes, meeting with Stefan, like walking around in the Danube, than I had in Sweden. But hey, in Sweden I was under the travel ban, and in Serbia I was not, which is completely illogical. But then they canceled my flight, and all other flights had stopovers in Schengen. So I called the DHS again, and I said, "Hey, I was living in Serbia for like more than 2 weeks. I'm not under the travel ban anymore. Can I, with a B1 visa, can I still use a flight with a stopover in Schengen?" And they said no. Airports in Schengen are under travel ban, so they wouldn't let me in on the flight just because the stopover is in Paris or Amsterdam. I had to have a stopover in Istanbul. So I had to wait in Serbia for another week. And the only flight that they operated between Istanbul and the States went to Chicago for some reason. The next flight to Atlanta was July 1st. So it was way better for me to just wait another week and fly to Chicago and then ask people in the institute to book me a flight from Chicago to Atlanta. So I went to Novi Sad, which is a beautiful, beautiful city on the Danube banks, north of Belgrade in Vojvodina. I had a great time there. I had some adventures when I was back in Belgrade, and I was even asked to be a hacker for a Bosnian mafia or something. Yes, weird. When you drink palinka in hostels, weird things happen. We had a good time. No, I'm not a hacker for any mafia, if you must know. And the next day was my flight. And so I flew Belgrade, Istanbul. So when I was checking in my bag to go to Chicago, lady looks at my passport, looks at my visa, and says, "Are you sure you're okay with this visa?" And then I said, "Well, I called the DHS about it. Here's the document that I stayed in Serbia." And she said, "Okay, just keep those documents." And she checked in my bag. She gave me my 2 boarding passes for Istanbul and for Chicago. I arrived in Istanbul. If you ever had a stopover there, it's a large airport, and like you have to walk around and then go through another screening. And then they are letting people that fly to Chicago on board, and they look at my passport. They tell me to come over, look at this, and ask me, "When was the last time you were in Poland? Because if it's less than 2 weeks, we're gonna have a problem." And then I gave them the piece of paper that I was given by my first host. Look, here is the statement that I have entered Serbia 3 weeks ago, and I also have that stamp in my passport. So the guy took a phone and he took a picture of this document, and then he said, "Okay, you can go." So like, hey, I'm on a plane to the States. Like they are not going to like want to get rid of me now. Like you're not getting rid of me that easily. I am on my plane to Chicago, and then with the flight entertainment system, you can choose any music. So we are taking off, and I am blasting "Sweet Home Alabama" on my headphones, obviously.
Brilliant.
And it was an overnight flight. So, I mean, it was dreadful, of course. Like, it's an overnight flight. You can't even sleep normally.
How many hours is it from Turkey to the States?
Oh, I think
10?
like 9 or 10, I think.
That's
yeah,
long.
yeah. So I think we took off like or even more, like from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., the equivalent of 7 a.m. But I crossed a lot of time zones, so I would need to check that.
Yeah.
And we arrived in Chicago in what would be after midnight Chicago time. And so now I have to go to U.S. Customs. And I'm just thinking about it as like a journalist experience. Like, let's see how far I can go. Because I just want to ease up like my anxiety. So like, okay, it's a journalist experience, it's my like scout kind of task to try. So I'm approaching this U.S. Customs officer, and I was holding like a folder with a lot of things in there. And in that folder, I had invitation letter from Alabama, and they also asked about my address in the States when they let me on that flight to Chicago. So like, I go, hey, this is my invitation paper. This is where I will be staying. Like, I have an apartment there. And so I had this invitation letter. I had my registration in Serbia. And in that folder, I also had like, a little bit of a mess, like an old boarding pass, my paper about Soviet propaganda, this kind of stuff. Like, I had it in my folder, and like I thought that they will be needing just one or two of these papers. So these officers looks at my passports, like, what happened to your passport? It's an old passport. It got wet. What do you mean? It's still valid. I'm getting a new passport now anyway. And what is your purpose? Like, I'm going for a research fellowship. And what do you do like outside of that? Like, what kind of documents you have in this folder? And then he grabs the entire folder. And like, I have no way to say like, okay, just look at this. This is my invitation letter. I just answer, oh, an invitation letter from Alabama and registration from Serbia. I mean, I just answered the question. And he grabs my entire folder and like looks through it with my Soviet propaganda paper there. And then he looks at this registration in Serbia. He looks at me. I don't remember what kind of question he asked. He was unfriendly. He was like, no hands on the table or everything. And then he said, oh, it will take a bit longer to process. You wait here. He takes my documents, goes somewhere to a different room. He says, okay, now go wait in that room. So I was singled out for another interrogation.
Oh dear.
But like, I'm waiting here, I'm looking around. There are a lot of, Turkish families and people that you meet, in the middle of the night at the airport waiting for, another interrogation. And like, thankfully my flight to Atlanta was in a few hours. And they called me right away. And there was another officer like in front of a computer. And he said, okay, so what is your purpose? What did you do in Europe? Are you employed? What were you doing the previous times you were in the States? Oh, you said you were visiting a friend. Is there someone who you are in a relationship with? This kind of questions. And like, when is your flight back? Why don't you have like your boarding pass for your flight back? When is your flight back again? He asked me this question 3 times to see if I'm consistent. And he would be asking all these questions. So what are you doing like in Europe? So what am I supposed to say? Hey, I had this PhD project, but my advisor turned out to be a narcissist and he stopped talking to me. So now I had one internship for 6 months, but now I'm kind of, doing research on my own and writing and doing videos. And now I'm going on this fellowship, but I might still finish that PhD in another institution. Would you say that to an officer? Like, he would just think you're weird and like you're pulling something on him. But he wanted really to know how anchored I am in Europe, so that I don't like land an illegal job there. Okay, like if I landed an illegal job with Jeff Deist as like a researcher at Mises Institute, that would be like grand, Normally you get an illegal job sweeping floors, and I'm a researcher illegally. Like, if there's one place you can do that in, you can try Alabama. But no, like that wouldn't happen. Although I think they would like that to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's asking me all these questions, and in the end he says, I don't understand your story. Why were you in Serbia for so long? Why couldn't you fly from Poland? Like, why couldn't you go on a low flight and fly from Poland? Why were you in Serbia? This is weird. I don't get it. I said, because of the travel ban? Like, what travel ban? Like, like the air, they wouldn't even let me in on an airplane if I was flying from Poland because I
Yeah.
don't have a proper visa to the States. This is the travel ban thing. This is why I was in Serbia. And like, I don't understand. Like, if they didn't let you in, that's like the issue between you and the company, not between you and the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Like, really? Because I called the DHS 4 times about it, and then he said, "Oh, these guys don't really talk to us." So I had customs officers in Chicago not knowing about the travel ban and thinking I'm weird
Wow.
for flying from Serbia. And then, I was tired and just exhausted from all this. It
Yeah.
was ridiculous. So I blasted out. That was like a really bad thing to do, saying to a customs officer, check whitehouse.gov. Like, do your job. Like, check whitehouse.gov. And he says, I do it all the time. This is my job. You know about
Obviously, you don't
economics, but
know.
I
Yeah.
know about immigration. And like, he got so defensive about it. Like, how dare you accuse me of not doing my job properly? Because you're not.
Yeah. Wow.
And then he said, oh, but you were just misinformed. If you are choosing to live your life misinformed, this is your right. And
Whatever.
yeah, I
Okay.
was misinformed. Like, travel ban doesn't exist, babe. But then he calls me again and says, okay, I let you in, but you said your flight back is August 7th, so I wrote in limited stay. You can only be in the US until August 10th. Like,
Wow.
normally they give you 6 months on the
Yeah.
B1. But it's like, okay, I'm in, bye.
Yeah. I don't care. I'm going anyway. Yeah. Wow.
So I got into the States, and then everybody, it was okay. It was already morning in Europe, but it was the middle of the night on Chicago airport, and people were like, "Did you get in? Did you get in?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. I'm going
Yeah.
to Atlanta now." So I went over to the other terminal for domestic flights, checked in my bag, and just went to sleep in front of the gate to Atlanta. And then I landed in Atlanta. I had my limo driver from Tiger Taxi that was booked by the institute. We went to Chick-fil-A. That driver was actually driving people between Atlanta airport and the institute a lot. So he started asking like really reasonable questions about political philosophy because he was already used to that,
Yeah. Wow.
working for the institute as a driver. Which the same thing you will get from the hairdresser that is also working for people at the institute. She's like, oh, just I live near the institute and people ask me to do their hair and then I talk with them a lot. They are a lot of good people. So what do you think about that? And you have this wonderful, beautiful 21-year-old hairdresser asking you like really cool things about philosophy because she lives close to the institute. So
Amazing. Yeah. And what sort of research did you get up to while you were there?
like I've already mentioned some of that.
Mm.
What I wanted to do is like, as I said, when somebody manipulates you, when somebody wants to control you, when somebody wants to like just use you for their own agenda, they don't care about your uniqueness. This is what narcissists do. This is what sociopaths do. This is what totalitarian states do, and any kind of hierarchy, oligarchy structure. When you are just like a mm, element of the machine, but
Mm.
like you are not an element of the machine in any way, not of any machine. You are your own unique person, special, worthy of love, just how you are. So to convince you that you are a part of some kind of machine or to make you act like one, they have to use manipulation techniques. And my proposition was that we already know those manipulation techniques from clinical psychology because there are people with disorders like narcissists who use these methods of control instinctively. And then we can draw parallels between what they are doing on a micro scale, like individual level, and what the totalitarian state is doing on a macro level, political scale.
Mm.
Because ultimately, it's all about an individual being controlled. And so I would go on to research how Marxism started with Hegel, like the notion of unity, that there can only be one mind. And then Marx came with conflict creation and with then a very skewed, like very rotten version of dialectics, right? Because dialectics before in antiquity, that was a method of argumentation. But it evolves to be a method of manipulation, of saying that, truth doesn't exist. Anything can be right. Anything can be justifiable if you just do it right under the dialectic. So it was further used to manipulate people into basically believing anything the party says, because anything can be true and anything can be false. That just depends on the will of the one mind. So that's the mixture of what Hegel did and Marx did. So you see the equivalence of manipulation techniques that are used in toxic families, that are used in toxic research groups, such as gaslighting, conflict creation, like piling people up against each other, making them believe that the other person is an enemy, making them believe, like manipulating them into abusing others, making them believe that nothing really matters, or that there is no such thing as truth. Everybody's right. So all those techniques, if a philosophy is a totalitarian state philosophy, it gets human nature wrong, because human nature is not a nature of an object. But if you get human nature wrong, you have to abuse and manipulate real humans who are different than what you think into acting like you want. So you will use tactics that are present already in toxic families. It's just that, okay, the equivalent of gaslighting, that sounds like dialectics, the Marxist one, not the ancient one. The equivalent of conflict creation, like piling people against each other, that sounds really like class struggle. So these are just, to give you an idea of what I'm getting at. Of course, it needs more elaboration, but that was my idea on of the research I was doing there. And I also had a lot of very positive responses from people that actually left socialist states or were abused politically in any way, saying that, wow, now I can find the language to describe what I've been through, because it's a common experience. When you leave a totalitarian state, you think that people will not understand you. People will not get how bad this was. People will not know what you've been through. You feel it so deeply inside that you are abused psychologically, but you cannot express that. You have that sense of isolation. So people are talking like a lot about, hey, economics, look at that, like the numbers for states that used to be socialist are so low, and so like people didn't have chocolate. But that's not the most important thing. Chocolate is important. That's not the most important thing out there. Like, that doesn't convey what you have been through internally.
The horror, yeah.
And then you think that, hey, I cannot explain this. I cannot trust my neighbor because they may snitch on me. I cannot speak my mind. I lived in fear that they will break into my apartment and like move furniture. I was kind of denied existence. I couldn't talk about someone from my family that went missing.
Wow.
I just lived in some kind of mental institution. Like, that wasn't even a horror. That was some kind of very disturbing, very weird mental institution where nothing made sense and you didn't have any sense of security or sanity even. And then you go out to the West and you're like, I'm never going to convey this. They will never understand it. I am isolated. I cannot find any language that describes it. But actually, individual victims of narcissists, they feel exactly the same. They feel like, you are not going to get it. It was so weird. I can't even explain it. I feel so isolated. Like, you will never hear me out.
Isn't
anyway.
That interesting?
And I noticed also in myself that this is the same kind of feeling. Like, someone abused you and like denied your right to be like your own individual. and somebody tried to manipulate you and erase your individuality in such a devious way, and it feels the same, and like the sense of isolation is the same. So now I can say, hey, if you defected from North Korea and you think like you are shouting at the wall, nobody will hear you, or if you escaped a toxic relationship with your like first husband or something, you are not alone. Like that sense of isolation and of like not having your words, of like being mute, this is a post-traumatic symptom. There
Mm.
are tons of people like you that understood what you have been, that can understand what you have been through, and that can empathize with you.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not common in culture. It's like not in Hollywood films. Like
Yeah.
it will not be covered by the New York Times, but who cares about them? There are
Yeah.
actually people that understand you, and there is actually like the whole clinical psychology can offer you a language to express what you've been
Yeah.
through. Like you are not alone, you are not isolated. It just feels that way. And I had very positive reactions from people, and I think they stem from that.
Brilliant. Amazing. Like you're doing super amazing work. When we met in Madrid, and you told me about what you were going to do in Mises, I was like, oh, this is really, really important. And I've been reading your blogs. Your blogs are really detailed. I'll add the link in the show notes. But
Yeah, I
right
have to
now,
post something soon. Yeah.
oh, really? What are you working on currently?
So okay, so I wanted to post it well December, but I had a rough time then. I wanted to post about like the post would be entitled "The Changelings of the Soviet Union,"
Mm.
and it was like a very very dark topic. A method of Stalin that he would kidnap important people from the states that he wanted to control, interrogate them, find a lookalike, kill them, and then insert the doppelganger.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So I wanted to do that in December because like the the longest night in the year, that's
Yeah.
diabolical. And of course sometimes like you could claim that high officials in communist Poland may have been actually doppelgangers, they may not have been themselves, and there are theories about that. However, like until somebody decides to test DNAs, we won't know.
Mm.
And a lot of times like you would be accused of being some kind of crazy person for even
Yeah.
suggesting that, because that was like so hidden. But so I
Wow.
wanted to post about this, but now actually today I have found a horrible, horrible exchange by New York Times on YouTube. And I was so stunned by it that I actually want to post about this now. It concerned during the siege of the Capitol, obviously, like the big event of 2021, there was a woman that was, I think, just like that died just being tread on by a crowd, like just died in a crowd. And what was so atrocious, like so horrible for me, was that the New York Times, and I saw this today and I just thought, okay, let's forget about the changelings for a while, because this is crazy and I'm just so appalled by this. So the New York Times would say that a Trump supporter from uh, Georgia, I don't know from where, uh, apparently died, and like they didn't call her woman, they called her a Trump supporter. And there were tons of comments saying like, I don't even feel sorry for her, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, or like, ha ha, oh, a new cut video, I'm over it. So like someone died, and
Yeah.
they are
This.
so dehumanized
Yeah. It's a
by the people that,
depersonalized. It's
and
awful.
that is so, people that read the New York Times, they are actually, they that was insane. They have no respect for human life. They just, she was so depersonalized, dehumanized. And I was just worried, like, oh my god, it isn't human nature. Like the next step, if they tell them to kill people, they will just not view them as people. Like it already happened in history. Like we know those mechanisms, and like we see them like in front of our eyes, like through a YouTube post by the New York Times, and people like that are out there, and like they are commenting saying that I'm not even sorry, whatever, ha ha. Oh, and she had a flag, don't tread on me, ha ha ha, and she was treaded upon. It's not a matter of laughing like someone died. Next step, you will be killing people,
Yeah. Like
and
we
then
know with
they
the
will be.
Milgram experiment, we know that people are very highly manipulable. So yeah, it's very dangerous, that stuff. Really dangerous.
And I just like it just hit me today. So like that's my. I think I have to write something up about it real quick
Amazing.
because that's fresh.
Yeah.
And I was just like I was genuinely scared looking at this post.
Yeah. Let's lighten the mood, Agnieszka.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate, talking about all that stuff. Like, I think people will find that super interesting because it is really interesting. But let's have some flash questions, right? So you're going to answer these in 45 seconds or less. And,
Okay.
don't overthink them. It's just a bit of fun. Rap or grunge?
Recently rap because reasons.
Chocolate or strawberry?
Strawberry with dipped in chocolate. Chocolate.
Okay, we'll allow that. Rom-com or horror?
Horror, obviously.
Um, Tell us one thing or tell us someone that you admire and why you admire them.
My mom, because she's a very strong woman who who didn't have it easy,
Mm,
but she gave me a great life and great resources.
amazing. What's the toughest thing you've ever done and are proud of?
Escaping that toxic relation with academia and being vocal about this.
Brilliant. What's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure, being a bit too desperate about wanting things in life, thinking like life should go this way and not another way, and that for a while that actually pushed people away from me. And I was being insufferable for a while and I think I've learned from it to let it go and enjoy life and enjoy relations and just express to people how much they mean for me
Awesome.
because it's not obvious. And I just
Awesome.
learned the hard way that it's not always obvious.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And finally, what are people just not doing enough of that they should be doing?
Loving their children.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Absolutely. That's one
That's
of
what
my
it all
bugaboos.
boils down to. Like,
Hmm.
love your children unconditionally, and the world will just fall into place.
Big time. With that, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for having me. I love this.
Where can
It's
people
very
find
encouraging
you?
too.
Where can people find you on the internet? I'll link your blog, but
Oh,
if
so
people would like to get in touch, where can they find you?
so there's my blog. There's my email on the blog, and there's my Facebook page on the blog. So I think you can find everything there. Yeah, just
Fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. It's really important work
thank you
and
so much, Rob. It's so important for me to hear.
amazing.